Have you ever seen a trailer for a game and thought it looked awesome? So you waited patiently for it to be released then. Well, this video is about what could have been. So hey, I'm Thegamerfrommars, and this is the list of the top 10 cancelled video games. Earthbound 64 was the third installment of the Mother franchise, and it was being developed on the Nintendo 64 DD. The game was going to revolve around Lucas in a 3D futuristic western world, which is always awesome, and it had the same RPG gameplay that the series is known for. After the 64 DD add-on was discontinued, the development shifted to the Nintendo 64, but after a lot of difficulty creating the 3D world, the game was cancelled. The only reason I'm placing this at number 10 is because the game did end up being released on the Game Boy Advance in 2006, even if it never came to North America. Yes, Nintendo, we're still waiting. Did you know that there was a non-horrible Mario CDI game? Well, that's not saying much, but anyway, Super Mario Wacky World was supposed to be a sequel to Super Mario World. You see, back in the day, the electronic company Philips had the rights to make games based off Nintendo characters. While all of the Nintendo CDI games were utterly awful, there was one that looked somewhat promising. Mario's Wacky World was developed by two men who worked 24/7 on the project, and when the beta version was shown, Nintendo was impressed. The game would take place in more realistic areas and have a less straightforward gameplay, but it was eventually cancelled. Now, I'm not saying it would have been a terrific game, I'm just saying it could have been a lot better then.
I hope she made lots of spaghetti! Luigi, look!
Did you know that there was a James Bond video game planned for the Virtual Boy? I know most of you will be skipping this, but I think an FPS on the seizure-inducing system would be kinda fun, especially if you link up multiple consoles and run around the archives. I'm pretty sure this was most likely a racing game by the two images we have of it, but I can still wonder. Originally for the Sega Genesis, then the 32X under the name Sonic Mars, Sonic X-treme eventually moved to the Sega Saturn. The game would feature 3D graphics that seemed to morph when Sonic moved. The game looked pretty fun with some unique game design and visuals, but unfortunately the project was canned. The problem was that Sonic X-treme had to be completed by the holiday season, but since the creator had become ill from working non-stop, the game was cancelled. Remnants of the boss fight engine can be found in the Night series, but Sonic never received a true 3D adventure on the Saturn. So we had to wait until Sonic Adventures for a true 3D Blue Hedgehog experience. DD Planet was a 4-player shooter developed for the Dreamcast. Unlike other shooters, this seemed to be almost like a fighting game, where you customize your robots and choose from 3 different course types. Although not much more is known about the game, it does look like fun and there was set to be online play. If a copy is ever found, I would like to play it. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie were two of the best games on the Nintendo 64, so when fans heard about Banjo 3, they were ecstatic. Unfortunately, very little is known about this title other than it would probably be on the GameCube. The reason it was cancelled is because the geniuses at Microsoft bought out Rare and basically destroyed the company. The closest thing we got to a sequel was Nuts and Bolts for the 360, which was mediocre. Hopefully someday Rare could go back to making non-Wii Sports ripoffs. I was always intrigued by the concept of a 3D Mega Man game, and Mega Man Legends 3 looked like a great way for me to get into the series. In the Legends series, you play in a 3D world with tons of enemies and areas to explore. While the reviews for the first two games were okay, there was still a very big fan base that was excited to finally see a third installment, but then Capcom cancelled it. When people asked why the game was cancelled, a representative from Capcom Europe basically blamed lack of fan support in a tweet. Capcom, you really need to get your act together. At Space World 2000, a lot of interesting games were shown off, but the one I think is most interesting was Super Mario 128. In the game you control, well, 128 little Marios running around the screen. You could control the Marios to do different things and even change the land that they stood on. The game looked very promising, but finally in 2006 Nintendo stated that the project was no more. But that doesn't mean parts of the game were never used. The concept of controlling tons of characters at once was later used in Pikmin, and the sphere walking was used in Super Mario Galaxy. So even though I've never played Super Mario 128, I kinda have. The California Raisins were claymation characters in 1980s commercials, so they were basically less creepy versions of the Noid. Anyway, in 1990 the Great Big Escape was completed. It looked like a fun little platformer for the NES, which took a lot from Mega Man with its play the levels in any order you want style. Unfortunately, the game never made it to stores, mainly due to the fact that toxins were found in the company's raisins the same time this game was going to be released. What a shame. In 2008, I saw a trailer for a video game simply entitled Bob's Game. Its claim to fame was that one 25-year-old spent over 1,500 hours developing a game of his dreams. It basically plays out through the perspective of one boy and his life in a town with tons of different people. All the characters seem crazy and the comedy seems to be hilarious by turning everyday tasks into video game form. At first, Bob showed the game to Nintendo for the DSiWare market, but Nintendo simply didn't want anything to do with the game. So the next most reasonable step would be to post the game on other services and hope that Nintendo would warm up to the idea of having Bob's Game on theirs. But that's the opposite of what he did. Instead, he burned all bridges with Nintendo by claiming he was the best game creator to ever live, then decided to make his own handheld gaming system which will supposedly only cost $20. Bob, your game looks pretty good, but honestly it might as well be cancelled. Hey guys, could you please click on the subscribe button right there? It would really help me out. And also, if you haven't already, please check out some of my other videos. Thanks.